Hey, it's Jared Hill, and I wanted to talk to you about the a6300 from Sony. Now, I got it in earlier today and quickly dove right in and started playing with this camera. And a couple things really stuck out to me. Now, I didn't own the a6000, however, I have used one before. I did own a couple of a5100s, and then also here on the table, just to show some of the other cameras, I've got the RX100, I've got the a7R II. What I'm filming on is the a7S, and I've also used the a7S II, so variety of different Sony cameras that I've had experience using. So I've been able to experience how fast autofocus is, how fast adjusting settings and getting through the camera is on multiple different Sony cameras. And then I obviously come from a Canon background, and so I have that background too with how those Canon cameras operate. But anyways, I've spent a few hours with this Sony camera, and though I feel like I'll probably need to spend a bit more time with the camera to go shoot in some different situations, I've already tested it a little bit in the typical settings that I would use, perhaps this camera or even the RX100, which I typically use as just a pocket camera when I don't want to carry much on me. I'll have the RX100. I've also used the RX100 as a vlogging camera, which I don't think you could do with this camera because the screen doesn't articulate all the way back. So let's talk about the a6300, what I like about it so far with the minimal use that I've been able to put on it. So the first thing I did was go through this camera and just kind of set it up the way that I like it, switching my image capture to RAW so that I'm not shooting a kind of medium quality JPEG. Go in and just change some of the autofocus settings to the way that I like them, reconfigure my back button for selective focus area, which is something I like to do, and just kind of go in and make some little changes. The one thing that I first made a mistake was you've got this kind of roller back here, which the placement of the roller on the back of this camera right here adjusts your shutter speed, and then you have your aperture up here. So the first thing that I did was accidentally, I thought I was adjusting, wasn't paying attention. Thought I was adjusting even my ISO from here, but I was actually adjusting my f-stop. And so I kind of took a second. I thought, okay, I have to maybe relearn a little bit of button placement, which you can remap these buttons and change them. It's just by default, this back here is going to adjust either whatever menu you're in, or if left alone, it's going to just adjust your your f-stop, I'm sorry. And so that's where it led to a little bit of confusion. I'm adjusting my f-stop right now. However, if I rotate this menu here, I am able to adjust my shutter speed. And once it's selected, I can actually go and adjust my shutter speed with this. So, and the same goes with the ISO. Once you're in the ISO menu, you can use this to adjust your ISO or this. And what's funny is this actually jumps 200 at a time when you use it up here. So different uses for that switch. That's going to take a little bit of getting used to for me. So the one thing that I really wanted to know was, is the autofocus going to live up to its hype? I did get it with the kit lens, and I feel like the kit lens is probably the lens that they promised autofocus will be extremely fast with, since it is the lens that it comes with. So I did a little bit of playing around and shooting with you know, the autofocus, just trying to focus on one thing and then move over slightly and see how fast the camera refocused on an object that was further away. So what I'm showing you right now is just what I see through my viewfinder on the a6300. So as you can see, I'm focusing on an object in the foreground and then shifting the camera over a little bit and focusing on something that's quite a distance away, just to see what that looks like. And I'm focused, or I'm zoomed in at its widest. So I'm not zoomed in extremely close on anything. I'm just kind of seeing how the camera performs. Now, to compare that to a camera that's a little bit cheaper, but not by much, let's take a look at how fast the RX100 Mark IV focuses. So I'm doing the same thing here. I'm focusing on a subject up close and then shifting over and focusing on a subject further back. And then for just an extreme comparison, let's actually take a look at how fast the A7R2 is. So here I am doing the same thing. I'm focusing on a object up close and then moving the camera over just a little bit and focusing on an object that's further away. And it is extremely hard to tell in a controlled situation like this, you know, the difference in speed. You could definitely tell the difference in speed between the RX100, but it's very hard to tell the difference in speed between the A6300 and the A7R2. Where I will be able to tell the difference is when I am trying to autofocus with my, you know, taking pictures of my children who are fast moving, who are all over the place, and it's hard for a camera to, you know, when you've got like maybe one of your kids running towards you and you're trying to take a picture, it tends to miss on occasion with that autofocus. If you have your camera just left to its, you know, standard autofocus settings, because of that issue, I actually use autofocus a little bit different on my A7R2, and I'll talk about that in a separate video, and I'll link to that video down below. So that's what I'm excited to test out, is just how fast the autofocus will be in those different situations. Another thing I found really interesting for those of you who are planning to shoot video with the a6300 is that there are a couple of Super 35 modes and a couple of regular modes for shooting video in. And so basically the difference there is the way that the sensor is capturing the footage. In Super 35 mode, it seems like it's capturing it's giving you more of what this lens would be natively. So for example, when you put a 16 to 50 millimeter lens on a crop sensor camera, this camera being full frame, this being a crop sensor, so this has a full size sensor, this has a smaller sensor, you're actually not getting 16 to 50 out of this lens. You're getting a bit more zoom. You're in closer. You're actually, I didn't do the math, but you're getting probably closer to 2470 out of a lens like this. However, when you go into Super 35 mode, you're getting more of what the lens would do natively. And so I'm showing you kind of the difference right now between what that crop looks like. And I think that that's a fantastic feature to get in this little camera, because when you're filming and you want to be able to get natively what your lens is supposed to give you, you're actually able to get that in video mode. Now, it's not something that you're able to get in photo, because when you're taking a picture, you're using the full sensor, so there's no way to crop or change that sensor. But the fact that the sensor on this camera is a 24 megapixel sensor, the sensor is actually larger than the area that is needed to capture video, and so they're able to kind of remap that sensor to operate differently, which I think is really cool. They're doing that with a lot of cameras these days, not just Sony. They're doing it here with this camera as well, and other manufacturers are doing the same thing. They're using different portions of the sensor to give us users more control over our camera, which is pretty neat. So another thing that I've never used is a power zoom lens. I've always, used photography style lenses, even for shooting video. And so I decided to go with this power zoom lens that comes with the camera because this camera will probably be more of my everyday carry. Up until now, it's been the RX100, and the RX100's kind of taken a little bit of a beating. But the photos that come out of the RX100 just aren't as good as something that you would get out of a camera, like one of these mirrorless cameras with the different lenses. I feel like there's more depth that comes out of the photo. The focus fall off is more drastic on these lenses than it is with the RX100. Don't get me wrong, this is probably one of the, if not the best, pocket camera on the market for the money. Canon also makes a really good one too. But as far as your photos go, your photos are going to look a little flatter. They're going to be compressed differently than they will be if you're using a camera with a bigger lens and with a bigger sensor. They're just, overall, I think a better experience as far as photo goes. The RX100 is great because of its size, but it also has its limitations. So the a6300 will probably become more of my primary carry. Other things that I'm going to be testing, and I'll be back with more videos on this camera, is its flash performance. It does have a built-in flash, and I have shared my opinion many times with the built-in flash on this camera and how I like it and dislike it and how I sometimes use the flash, if at all. So it'll be interesting to see how this flash performs. Notice that it does not pop up directly above the lens, which is actually good. It does have a hot shoe, an intelligent hot shoe here that Sony will, you can use one of their external flash, same type of hot shoe as what is on my A7R II. So I can actually use my Sony external flash on this camera. I try not to call it a speed light because I know speed light is a Canon thing, but that's what I'm referring to is the external flash that you can mount on a camera. You can do that here. As well as mount, Sony has an adapter on here that allows you to connect XLR inputs to your camera for audio. Those work really well on cameras like the A7R, A7S, A7 II, and all those cameras, but it also will work on the a6300. So although it is amazing and fantastic that we do have a headphone jack here, or not a headphone jack, but a microphone jack here so that we could plug in a 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter microphone, you can also get the adapter and have 2 XLR inputs going into your camera, which really makes this thing a powerful video tool for the size. So other things that are pretty interesting about it is that it does have an EVF right here. It is a little awkward to use because it's so small. I didn't like the fact that this one pops up and then you have to pull this out on the RX100. It seemed like a lot of steps to use an EVF. I'm glad that it has one versus not, but I just never use it because of that. This does have one right here, although you really have to press yourself up against it in order to see in that EVF. Once again, it's better that it has one than it's not. And I do like the fact that it is not a pop-up type of solution, which would be something that I would never use because it just takes too many steps for that. This camera does have NFC and Wi-Fi, just like all other Sony cameras do these days on the decent semi to professional level, which allows you to quickly transfer images from your camera to your phone, which is one of my favorite features of the Sony platform, is that NFC and Wi-Fi. So just to show you a few more things about the camera, it does take a full-size Sony battery, which I say full size, but they are pretty small. But it takes the same size battery that my A7R II does. And what I like about that is that it is one of the biggest batteries that Sony makes for these cameras. So that means that I'm going to get a bit better battery life out of a camera so small. The SD card does slide right in here next to the battery, so that's awesome. It also, you can remove the battery door here by sliding this little notch down, and you can remove the battery door. So I would wonder if shortly soon they have a battery grip available for this that would, you know, maybe make it fill the hand a little bit better and give you the option for 2 batteries. That would really make this a powerful camera, especially for those who need something small to go out and film when you're using more battery life because you're shooting video. Having a secondary battery in there would definitely help out a lot, as it does with this camera. Whether or not they'll come out with that, I have no idea. I haven't researched that. So I really like the power zoom lens. It is a nice option for kind of a kit lens. I'm not a fan of variable aperture, meaning that when you're zoomed out, you're at a maximum of 3.5 aperture, and when you zoom in, it changes your aperture to 5.6. That means that as you zoom in, your exposure changes. And for me, I like a fixed aperture lens, but for the price, you just can't go wrong. This lens is very quiet. It does make a little bit of noise, so if you're zooming while you're filming and you're using the internal microphone on the camera, you most likely will hear it a little bit, but it is relatively quiet and pretty easy to use. Holding this camera, you know, if you're typically holding it like a regular camera, your thumb rests nicely right here on the side where the power zoom is for zooming in and out on your photo or on your scene. Quickly remove this lens and add any other lens. Even this Sony 55 1.8 would work nicely on this little camera. So I'm excited to also get out and test this camera with some of my other lenses that I have. So thanks for checking out this video. Oh, not to mention a custom function button, which adds a little bit of that pro kind of user level that typically isn't found on smaller cameras such as this. But anyways, I will be back with more videos on this a6300 as I have more time to spend on it. And for those of you who are interested in purchasing one of these or are looking to get one of these, the link is in the description below. And I also will be producing content on this device to teach you how to use everything on it, because I know the a6300 is an excellent camera for those of you who are looking to try out the Sony platform or perhaps are looking to step up from something like a point and shoot. The a6300 is an excellent logical next choice, and I've already been referring it to people just as a next step because it's just such a fantastic camera for its size. So thanks again for checking out this video. Please subscribe to our channel or like this video if you found it interesting, and we hope to see you next time here on Ditch Auto. Thank you.